All right, Pete, let's go into the sports. Rebel sports. Let's take people's mind off the markets for a sec.
You need a little relief out there, right? You know, and anybody who ever asks, why do John and I talk about sports? Well, John was a linebacker with the Chicago Bears. I think that's a pretty damn good reason. I was a linebacker with the Vikings in Tampa and all kinds of other teams. So I think that's a good reason why we would want to do this as well. How many other guys on Wall Street can do that? Probably very few. John, I'm going to go right at this. I'm going to go right at the MLB, but it's not just MLB. It's Oakland, California. What in God's name is going on out there, John? The California state itself, we all love it. You and I were born and raised there, but there's a lot of issues that they're dealing with out there, and they don't do a very good job with it. You need sports teams in your town, in your state. You know, you've got to have that. That's something that is absolutely a sort of a spot where you've just got to have the opportunity for people. Well, you're going to have to cross over that bridge and go over to San Francisco if you want, because you know what? The Golden State Warriors no longer play in Oakland. They're in San Francisco. I mean, so there's one. You've got other ones out there as well, with the Raiders going to, well, Las Vegas. They've got that big, beautiful stadium. They're gone. You know who else is gone? The Oakland A's. You know where they play? Sacramento, California. That's temporary. 2028, supposedly, that new stadium is going to be built for them, John, and it's going to be so awesome to see them out there in Vegas. I think that the NBA is next. I mean, we're going to see a lot of different sports start to really, I think, get a lot more traction there in Las Vegas. It should be pretty cool. On the Strip, John, it used to be where the Tropicana Hotel was, is where they're building that stadium. It's only $1.75 billion for the stadium. That should be a pretty beautiful stadium, I would say, for a team that doesn't like to spend money. They're going to have a field that has spent a lot of money. But what do you think about this whole thing and the fact that they play in a minor league stadium? John, there's something wrong here. They can't put 14,000 people into that stadium. 14,000. I mean, most baseballs they're probably closer to 35 to 55,000. Some are even bigger. Most are, somewhere in that in-between spot. But they just cannot get anybody behind this team, even in Sacramento. You would think that they would, but they're just struggling along. And I just wonder, number one, what's wrong with Oakland, and why have they not figured out they should want to have these teams? That's one more draw that comes into your city, and people are going to spend money. They're not spending money anymore because they're not paying for the parking, the tickets, everything. I mean, unfortunately, they have really screwed up. Whoever is running the show out there, the mayor, whomever, obviously there's a governor out there in California that doesn't always think about some of these things very well either. What do you think about what's going on in Oakland and the fact that everybody has left?
Well, I think if you break down the word fan, Pete, it's fanatic.
Yep.
It's not fantastic. It's fanatic. So fans are fanatics, and Oakland has been losing those fans. Now, did they still have fanatical following for the Raiders? Yes, they did. But the Raiders wanted a new stadium, like many of these pro teams. They said, hey, you give us a new stadium and you pay for the bulk of it or we're gone. Mm-hmm. And apparently they didn't blink. And they said, okay, we're taking the deal in Vegas. And everybody kind of laughed. And then, sure enough, they've got that beautiful Allegiant Field right off the highway there. Great access. Yeah. And they fill that thing every week, Pete. So the fanatics are now flying out. You and I were on Southwest Airlines a couple times, Pete, when they were playing, and they just left Glendale or wherever they were playing out in LA. Mm-hmm. Those fans followed them up and would follow them to Oakland. That's how fanatical they were. They were on the airplane coming up to Oakland to see their team play. Well, now they go out to Vegas. And in terms of the baseball team, I think you've basically torn their hearts out, Pete, by saying, you know what? We couldn't fill the old stadium enough, and we're not going to pay to build our own in Oakland, but we're going to be part of something really fantastic out in Vegas. And like you said, they're playing in a minor league ballpark. They can't even fill that. And that's because they put a stake through the heart of the fans. Yeah. And the fans left. And they're not going to follow up to, Sacramento. What is that, Pete? 80 miles away, something like that?
Solid.
Yeah, you're not going to put that many miles on back and forth and fight traffic, which in California is pretty tough. I mean, in other words, it's Oakland. It's not the state of California. It's the state of Oakland that is the problem. And because look at the Dodgers, you know, Magic Johnson and Guggenheim fill that stadium every single night and win world championships. But the other guys up in Oakland, not so much.
Yeah, it's a shame. It really is too bad. All right, John, as we approach the draft, I thought it would be sort of fun for us to figure out what these GMs and one of the biggest questions, and I think you and I will be on the same side of this question, but here's what I've got. So first of all, 5 of the first 10, it depends on what mock draft you look at. They're all a little bit different, but the most dominant position so far right now in the top 10, not the first round, but just the top 10 of the first round, is edge rushers. You've got at least 3 that are very, very likely to be going in that first 10 picks. Outside of that, you also have an interesting position that I've talked about forever, and I think you and I have always known this, and these GMs finally woke up to this, which is tight ends matter. Tight ends are the guy that's always going to be open because everybody's going to clutch onto the receivers, and they'll let the tight end catch the ball. Well, if they keep on doing that, we've found out over time these tight ends are kind of big receivers / big running backs / whatever, but they are unbelievable. Well, there's 2 tight ends in this year's draft that are going to probably go in the first 10, John, because they're that daggone good. And so that ought to be pretty interesting. That kid Warren from Penn State and Loveland from Michigan are absolute beasts. They're big, they're strong, they're fast, they catch the ball. They're pretty incredible. And on a lot of mock drafts I'm looking at, John, only 1 quarterback going in the top 10. You know, everybody was saying, well, you know, it's going to be Shedeur, it's going to be this, it's going to be Cam Ward and this guy and that guy. Cam Ward's there, but I think Shedeur has been kind of sifting a little bit lower. Doesn't mean he doesn't go in the top 10, but I'm seeing less and less of that. So that I think is an interesting thing. Cornerbacks are another spot where there is a heck of a lot of them that potentially could be in that top 10. But here's my question for you is this. Free agency is for need, in my opinion, and draft is for talent. So if you go by who are the most talented players in this year's draft, I think it does make a lot of sense that you've got all these edge rushers, you know, like that kid Carter from Penn State, John, absolutely the best player, I think, in the draft. And then you could go to his tight end, and we talked about this the other day, one of the best players, not just tight ends, players in the draft. And so I think you're looking at talent when you look at the draft. And if you make a mistake, you know what? Yeah, it's a mistake. You screwed up. You did this, you did that. But at least you've gone to the free agency side, in my opinion, to get what you need. So you went out, you got what you needed. You got that quarterback, you got that running back, you got that left tackle, whatever it is. But you're getting talent when you go into the draft. Do you agree with that, or do you think I got it backwards?
No, I think a lot of people have said for years, Pete, that you draft the best player available rather than just going for need. You draft the best. Who's the best? That's who you draft. Well, obviously, like the Tennessee Titans have no quarterback right now, Pete. So they're going to have to go for a quarterback, I think. And I agree with Mel Kiper. I think it's going to be Cam Ward from Miami. Could they surprise and trade down and still get Cam Ward? They can't trade too far down, but if they traded down and they ended up with Jackson Dart, would that be terrible? No. Cleveland, I think, takes Travis Hunter. I like that pick a lot for Cleveland, Pete, because, again, somebody for the quarterback to throw the ball to, as well as a guy that can kind of be electric, both on defense. Again, he's not going to start both ways, folks, for the whole game, but he might for certain parts of it. Pete's already said Abdul Carter. He's probably going to be the Giants, and he'll probably be the best linebacker that they've had since Lawrence Taylor. And then, Pete, I'm thinking that guys like Mason Graham, big D lineman, Will Campbell out of LSU, those kind of guys are pretty special. But if they get taken ahead of the Raiders will have a shot at Ashton Gentry. And Ashton is a beast. We've already discussed him. I don't need to belabor it. He looks like a slightly smaller, but maybe even tougher guy to tackle than King Henry.
Yep.
So if he goes to the Raiders, Pete, man, I think the Raiders are in great shape.
Yep. I think Pete Carroll is going to do what he's going to do, and I think it's going to fall right into his lap. And I think the other thing that you said that makes a lot of sense is, does Tennessee trade down? And they don't even have to go down too far, John, to get a bunch of picks from somebody who's desperate. So it's a possibility, and everybody keeps saying, well, Cam Ward's the first pick in the draft. He's going to go there. He'll be in Tennessee because they need a quarterback. That's all potentially true. But maybe they're willing to say, you know what? Dart or whomever is almost as good, and we can get him and a whole bunch of picks on top of it, right? A first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, a this, a that, and the other. I mean, so I think there's a lot to this whole thing, and it makes it that much more interesting. It's why the NFL draft is so fun. It's why the first round of the draft takes an entire night just to do that, because it is so important. It is so big. You got a lot of trades, and I think this year we should probably see quite a bit of trading, John. I think we're going to see that. Some years we see a lot, some years we don't. I think this year we're going to see a lot of trading, especially if it starts with the very first pick.
Now, I'll leave you with this question, Pete. If you're the Chicago Bears, my Bears, and you have the opportunity to take Warren at tight end or a killer offensive lineman, which one does Caleb Williams need more? And I know what I think. Tell me what you think.
I think he's got to have a tight end. If he has the tight end, John, every quarterback's, that's where they go, a really good quarterback. And I do think that he is a very good quarterback. Not really good yet, but last year he was pretty damn good, actually, for a rookie quarterback with no help at all. No help at all. He has some receivers. He's got okay tight ends, whatever. No offensive line. The guy got the crap kicked out of him on every play. And one thing I was proud of for him was he didn't complain. He just got up and got back in the huddle and did it again and again and again. If he has the right guy at tight end, he can drop him the ball. And I'll tell you, that kid, I saw him in person. He is legit 6'6", 260, runs really well, and has unbelievable hands. So when you put all that together for a tight end, we're talking about a guy who's bigger than Travis Kelce. He's bigger than, almost every other great tight end in the football game right now, and he can run. So I think that would be something that the quarterback would really like to see.
Yeah, if you get a chance to get Tyler Warren, you take him over almost anybody else if you're the Chicago Bears. Now, maybe they'll get a chance to trade down, Pete. That's something that sadly the Bears do a lot. This year, they're not drafting number 1. They're drafting number 10. Yeah. But I like the idea of getting a guy that, like, I think you told me, Pete, he had 104 catches as a tight end. That's like 2 careers at Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody gets 104 catches at Notre Dame. But this guy, 104 catches on a great Penn State team. I think you got to take him. And he's strong, like you said, big and fast. So, Tyler Warren, put it on the books, folks. If he's there, the Bears take him.